All right, we're probably live now, so I'm just gonna go ahead. Yeah, there we go. Hey, Anthony, what's up? Oh, you know, just trying to keep up with this like Ethereum at the treadmill speed of like 50. That's what it feels like right now. It's just like somebody turned the treadmill up to 50, and we're all just trying to stay on the treadmill. Right. Right. Yeah, OBS. Uh, can you say something? You might not have any sound. Anthony is muted. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Once again, I'm fucking up. Sorry guys. Sorry guys. Again, Anthony was talking about how long of a week it's been. So it like I said, it's one of those things. Okay. Here we go. Now say something.
Hello.
Okay.
Testing.
Oh, well, now I can't hear you. Son of a bitch. Say something.
Oh. Hello. Testing.
Oh God. Sorry guys. Well, now they can hear you, but now I can't hear you. Is it? This is it. How come this is the stream that's breaking?
Well, they can hear me, but I don't think you can hear me.
I still can't hear you. Yeah, yes, chat. I know you can hear Anthony, but I can't, and that's the important part. Okay. Oh, it's gonna be this. Okay, now say something.
Yo.
Okay, there we go. Sorry guys. All right, we're back for the third time. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm good. I think is the stream okay?
The stream's okay.
Is chat gonna say? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, we're fixed.
Awesome.
Okay. So they couldn't hear you. They could hear me. So okay. Just starting over. Goddamn, this Ethereum thing is fucking crazy, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. But I think I'm not alone in that. So what's Ethereum been like for you for the last week?
I mean, it's been like it was back in DeFi summer, like just absolutely insane. I get up every morning, I go to my computer, and there's just so much to catch up on. It's insane. It really is. And I think the most insane thing about it is the hilarious thing is like, if I kind of wake up a couple of hours like later than I usually do, I miss out on like so much that happens kind of like, I miss out on kind of like aping into something that's gone 10x or whatever. It's just the opportunity cost of sleeping is insane. Right. But I mean, I can't skip sleep. If I do that, then I'm just, I just going to like screw myself later down the line. So yeah, I guess that's just the sacrifice I make.
Right. I definitely want to talk about loot because this is what we're talking about. This loot thing is crazy. But like you just talked about, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like the opportunity costs of not paying attention to Ethereum are like insane right now. And like I've definitely skipped meals this week. I've definitely like lost sleep this week. I've like haven't gone to the gym. And I've just been like injecting all of my energy into this fucking Ethereum thing because it's doing one of the things that it does every now and then where something's brand new and we all have to pay attention to it. And like I'm not complaining, but god damn it, like I want my life back.
Yeah, you look a little bit like a crazy caveman right now, just sitting in his house, like hermit, being like, "Oh, gotta ape into these NFTs. Oh god, screw exercise."
Well, yeah, but it's that on top of doing like 5 shows a week, which I know I signed up for, but like in trying to juggle both Bankless and also like keeping up with like this loot phenomenon is absolutely insane.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. Trying to do all the like usual work that kind of I'm meant to be doing, and then trying to kind of like follow the ecosystem. It's impossible. I mean, I do my daily show and try to keep up with it as much as I can, but it's too crazy. Like I can't just. I mean, I could do a daily show just on NFTs every day at this point. So like, and go for hours. So it's just crazy. But I mean, you mentioned loot. I think For me, I mean, for people who've probably seen this on Twitter, right? Loot for adventurers, it's called on OpenSea. I think loot has kind of like just been like 0 to 1 moment for NFTs, right? Where we had all these clones over the last few weeks of like the profile picture NFTs and all that kind of mania going on. And that was fine, but it wasn't really innovative. There wasn't really much kind of like new stuff coming out of that. And now we've had this loot thing launch, and it was literally just some like text as on like text file NFTs, and people are like, okay, what's this? Yeah,
like you thought you couldn't wrap your head around JPEGs. Like now we have text.
Exactly. So, and it's funny. I was thinking to myself, I'm just like, why did this kind of like take off? I mean, there's a few reasons, but I think what this proves is that people are going to speculate on anything, right? So if you see things going crazy within this ecosystem and you've got no idea why, just people love to speculate. That's it. Like I mean, humans have speculated on things for centuries, and I guess like the degen nature of crypto just kind of like charges that up and 100x's it. But I think the most interesting thing to me about loot is that what it did, it basically just said, hey guys, here's some tools, right? And that's it. Like, here's the tools. You can do whatever you want with it. And that was it. Like, there was no guidance. There was nothing. There was no kind of like roadmap. There was nothing like that. And the community's just run with it. I go into the Discord. It's like on fire. People are building things. Like, it's permissionless. It kind of feels like what happened with Ethereum, right? Where Ethereum just like existed, and because it's permissionless, you had all these people building on top of it. Whereas with this kind of NFTs, it usually had kind of like a central kind of like issuer that was part of the project, and they'd be like, oh, this is our roadmap. This is what these kind of like NFTs are. They're like profile pictures. But with like loot, it's like, okay, well, here are the item names. I don't know what they look like.
You do
like,
something
no one knows what they
with
look
it.
like.
Yeah.
You do exactly. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I played a lot of Minecraft back in the day. I love doing like creative stuff like that. Even though I'm not really like an artist, I can't really draw anything. I love just building things. So I played a lot of Minecraft early on. And the reason why Minecraft succeeded was in large part due to the fact that people could just do anything they wanted, right? They could build anything they wanted. There was no like central dictator saying, hey, you have to build this or you have to play the game this way. It's kind of like this open world, kind of like do what you want. And it was completely moddable as well. That's the thing I think a lot of people forget about Minecraft, is that the modding community was absolutely massive. People would just build things on top of this thing. People could install it and do stuff. And that's the same thing that I think is happening with Loot right now, where essentially everyone building on top of it is just building mods, for lack of a better term, for this thing, and everyone can kind of enjoy it. But I mean, you wrote your article right yesterday, I think it was, or whatever, that long Metaverse article, and you probably have like a lot of thoughts on this right now, right?
Yeah, totally. It was so opportune that this loot thing came at like literally the same week I was finishing this article. And like one of the reasons why I haven't had any sleep this week is because like I had to rewrite like the middle section of my article to like now to update itself with a loot paradigm. Because if you read my article after your like loot came out, you'd be like, well, what the hell? Like, why'd you miss this? Like, it wouldn't make any sense. And so like I was up to like 2:30 on Wednesday night, like finishing this goddamn thing. And so like, and basically the thesis is that the Metaverse is going to come around in the same way that we've just described loot, right? And so let's back up a little bit and build from the bottom up. Loot, instead of are NFTs, but instead of having a JPEG, a hash of a JPEG appended to them, they just have like 8 lines of text that represent 8 items inside of them. And then they put the onus on the community to ascribe meaning and cosmetic layers and other things around that token, right? So it's actually making the NFT even more simple in the hopes that people add complexity on top of that without having to actually embed it in the token. So people are adding on complexity onto this simple substrate. And so the metaverse is going to arrive around Ethereum in that same way. Whereas Ethereum is this property rights system, this object permanence system that allows the metaverse to arrive around all of these objects. And now that all of these objects exist on the same shared state, and what is Ethereum other than a state machine? Now that these objects all exist, all these objects can bump into each other. We can have like interactions. These like the sword can bump up against the armor, right? Like these are the bare bones of what this means. And it's up to other non-Ethereum technologies like your computer, like your VR headset, like your phone, to actually manifest these cosmetic properties around these tokens. And it's those things that can actually plug in and stitch in with each other into having like one sort of seamless, like Ready Player One type universe that we all want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's funny you mentioned Ready Player One, because that's exactly what I think of whenever I think of this metaverse stuff. Is that is the world that everyone kind of like wants, and I'm seeing bits and pieces of it pop up here and there, and it just, I think it can't be built from the top down, right? It has to be built from like bottom up, which is exactly what Loot is trying to do. Because for people to buy into this sort of stuff and for the metaverse to kind of like come to life, you need communities to build these things, right? You need communities to form around them, and a lot of communities don't like to form around things that are completely centralized in crypto, where there's a core team basically dictating the roadmap and not taking community input and not letting the community build on it. That I think kills a lot of projects, honestly, early on, is when they don't have a great community building on top of them. So yeah, it's going to be just wild to see. I mean, there's going to be clones of Loot that come out, but the funny thing is about Loot is that you can actually build derivatives on top of the loot bags that people already have, where you can mint these new things with the loot bag that you have, and then you have access to these whatever they are. Like there's like maps and kind of like realms and stuff, and it's kind of like super wild experimentation happening right now. And then I think people are trying to find like what's going to stick, because not everything's going to stick, right? There's always kind of like derivatives coming around, and people are going to just like come together as a community and decide on like which of these derivatives are going to stick around, which are going to be part of the actual metaverse, right, which are going to be part of the game, whatever the game decides to be. So yeah, I mean, it's just awesome to see. Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, the game doesn't exist, right? It's just like this thing in people's heads.
We're playing the game right now. The game begins with a speculative mania, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, exactly. True to crypto nature. But yeah, I guess like there's a question from the chat you wanted us to answer, David.
Oh no. We'll get to that. Don't let the we'll get to that one.
Yeah. All good. Yeah, no. I just generally, I think that the metaverse is not going to start from like a top-down approach. It's going to be bottom up, and this is the first signs of that and what's happening here. And it kind of reminds me of what like Yearn did for DeFi, where Andre launched the Wi-Fi token. I mean, he didn't pioneer liquidity mining, but he basically popularized it after Comp went live, and kind of like popularized the idea of like this just bottom-up approach to DeFi, where there's no kind of like core or central team. People can come and kind of contribute to it. There's no LLC, there's none of that sort of stuff. And we've seen many more projects within DeFi launch like that, where they started as like a DAO first, and then we've seen like social tokens as well do that sort of stuff. But now with NFTs, I think we're seeing it with Loot, where it's kind of like, yes, there was like one person, one guy, Dom, that created it and minted it. But the thing is, he didn't put out like a roadmap. He's not dictating kind of where this is going. He's just being like, yeah, community, go have at it. And they are like, they're just coming together, and eventually they'll settle on like a core team, which is fine. Like a core group of contributors. But the fact that the community can keep contributing, I think, is very important.
Yeah. And to back to what you said about like how this ecosystem it's a bottom-up ecosystem. This is the same bull case for Loot is like what I heard Vance Spencer talking about the bull case for DeFi, when like he broke my brain about DeFi like in early 2020, where he said like the reason why like DeFi is what it is because of the permissionless nature of innovation. It's exactly what you're talking about with Minecraft, just like opening up innovation to the maximum degree. Like that's what Wikipedia did, and now we have Wikipedia, right? Like it's just pushing computation to the periphery. And that's where things are the most efficient, right? Like people around Loot ascribe value to it, rather than having one central team that you have to trust and invest in and like keep up to date with. Instead, you have like people coming from the outside in. And because it's open, because it's an open permissionless ecosystem, you like lower the barriers for actually adding value onto the thing down to the absolute minimum, which is just fantastic.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it's funny because we can lower these barriers down even more, because right now I think what is happening with Ethereum, obviously, is the gas price is being high, prices a lot of people out. So we're going to lower these barriers down even further when we scale, or kind of like more of this stuff gets adopted on the layer twos. And on top of that, a lot of these loot bags are now very expensive. I think the floor is like 15 ETH, and the AGLD token is also there, and that's kind of like gone up in price too. But generally, I think that the derivatives and stuff like that is what keeps it kind of very the barrier to entry very low, because these derivatives can start off being worth nothing. You can mint them for free, and then people can kind of speculate on them, and if they actually want to form a community around them, they can. But still, like I say, mint them for free, but you still got to pay the gas fee. And I think every time I've minted one, it's cost like $80 in gas fees, which, for a lot of people, especially newer people, like that's a high fee, like very, very high. So
especially I think when they don't have conviction.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like we can lower the barriers like even more, but the fact that we were already, you know, kind of lowered it this much is amazing to me. And I mean, I agree with what Vance says. The reason why DeFi has been so popular is because of that permissionless nature, and that's exactly why I think loot is going to continue to be very popular. I mean, we're at the very beginning of this. Maybe we revisit this in 6 months, and loot's just like gone on the wayside, and something else took over. You never know, right? Because there was the same amount of like extreme hype around Yearn and Wi-Fi, and the hype normally follows the price of these things. I mean, it pretty much does. So if the price was to crash and then there's kind of like this lull for a little while, it doesn't mean the project's bad or the project stops growing, but like a lot of the community kind of tends to dissipate from there. But it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, what the long lasting community looks like for loot and what other projects spin up as well. Because I mean, if you think about gaming in general with NFTs, there's hardly any. Like, I mean, Axie Infinity is huge. It's like one game. Like, there's a few others out there now, but think about the actual gaming ecosystem and how many there are. There's like tens of thousands of video games, probably more than that, especially in the indie scene. And you know, we're transforming that, I think, with this what we're doing within NFTs and doing this kind of like bottom up approach, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, totally. Trey and Pedro, we're about to get to AGLD. I definitely want to bring that up, but I want to wrap this conversation up with this one last point. You talked about how loot is what YFI did for DeFi, right? Like this 0 to 1 moment that like broke everyone's brains and changed the paradigm. Mm-hmm. Well, you could have also said the comp token and the comp token and liquidity mining, and I would have been like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. And like the point I want to make is that like when you have these 0 to 1 moments, the chances of you having another one like right after that are like actually pretty high, right? Because people like you just had one, you have a brand new like fields, brand new pastures. We're all exploring them. The chances are that somebody's going to come across a diamond in the rough, right? As we like enter this new land, is actually pretty high, right? And so like it could actually turn into like a wave of just like, oh, we just came up with loot. Well, now we have this thing. And now we have this thing. And like NFTs tend to have like more energy and surface area than DeFi does. So I'm actually even more optimistic that like just because we had this paradigm breaking thing, I think we might actually have like some other paradigm breaking thing happen in the next like few weeks or months just by the nature of how these things work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we've unlocked this new item in our, not item, but like this skill in our skill tree, right? Where before we didn't kind of know that this was possible, or no one had done it, and it kind of been like a fringe thing, and now it's becoming, you know, going into the mainstream consciousness, and everyone's like, oh, okay, I understand this. This is really cool with regards to like loot. And that's the same thing that happened with liquidity mining and stuff like that, but I think what always ends up happening is that speculation gets ahead of everything. And we saw what happened with liquidity mining. You know, it's kind of like gone through a very tough phase over the last few months. People are trying to come up with better ways to do it, and kind of like fairer ways to do it, and longer term ways to do it. So I think that's what's probably going to happen here. But I mean, we're just going to ride the hype wave for now, and who knows where it's going to go, where it's going to end. It's just going to be a crazy ride.
Totally. Yeah. When we did see Yearn, we saw Yearn get forked into YFII, and then that got forked into YFII.
Yeah.
And then that got forked into YFIV for 4, which is funny. But like you just know that's like this is unsustainable. And ultimately we've forgotten about all of those, and there's only Yearn left. Kind of also why people are bullish on loot. It's like the OG ones. So there's this AGLD token which got airdropped to loot holders, and it's just I'm pretty sure it's just like a brand new ERC20 token. Maybe it has other features in it. I don't know if that's true or not, but like I think it's just a brand new ERC20 token that's just named something similar as an adventure gold after adventure loot, and it specifically got airdropped to loot holders. So the implication is that like this is the new currency of the loot universe because all the loot people have them. Which makes sense because we need a native currency that's like common, extremely common amongst all the relevant people. Like I'm sure everyone's holding ETH, but like even we need something more precise, right? We need a currency that's more specific to the loot people. And so they urge this like AGLD token. So you got, if you had one loot, you got 10,000 AGLD tokens. These are currently trading. They're very, very volatile because it's brand new. They're currently trading at $3.57. It's been as low as $2, and that's kind of like the high I've seen today. I think if we want to put on the bull caps, like this is a new macro currency in my mind, a new macro asset.
Yeah, maybe for like NFTs, in the macro sense there. But this is interesting because I mean, I think what you said is true, and it also I think is going to be a governance token as well within the Loot metaverse. I mean, this is all so early. Like, who knows what this is going to be? It's only been over the last few days that this has kind of come to prominence, and I think Loot has only been out for like 2 or 3 days. Sorry, AGLD has only been out for 2 or 3 days. But essentially, I think obviously the metaverse or a game needs a currency, and people are speculating that A gold is going to be the currency. But I think at the same time, people are speculating on A gold because of the fact that they can't buy the loot bags, right? Because the loot bags are like 15 ETH floor. That's not, that's a lot of money. So people are like, okay, well, how do I get exposure to the loot ecosystem right now? How do I kind of like ride this wave up? And A gold is probably the best way to do that. Not investment advice, but in terms of like looking at the kind of barrier to entry, because you can buy a fraction of an A gold, right? You can buy a fraction of a loot bag on the fractional platform, but it's a bit different. And it's not kind of like there's not that much there, and I mean there's a few different kind of like things to think about there. But I think an ERC20 token for people is just like second nature for them at this point. They're like, oh yeah, I know how to buy a token. I go to Uniswap and I buy it, and that's it, right? And that's all a lot of people are doing. But you're right. The price right now of it is extremely volatile. It's definitely not something that you should like ape blindly. I think that obviously people should do their own research and things like that. But this definitely feels like the birth of a new like kind of like ecosystem with that we're going to keep seeing kind of like derivatives built upon. I don't know if maybe there's another kind of like currency that comes out that's better than A gold. Who knows? But I think it's difficult to kind of like have any definitive answers right now. But it's just been interesting to see how anyone can launch these things and the people come together and like say, okay, well, this is the selling point for the currency. We all agree that A gold is the thing because we got airdropped it because we hold loot bags and everyone can buy it. It's on Uniswap. It has decent liquidity, all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how that gets kind of like integrated into whatever they're building in Loot.
Right. Like it's so hard to talk about like the problems that need to be overcome because like literally the metaverse doesn't exist. And like the bull case for Loot is that the metaverse exists. And so like, it's kind of like the problem is like, what the hell do we do first? Like we have these generative maps that apparently are part of like this new universe. We have, these new currencies. We have like these new items. I'm kind of worried that like we only create like all these components and never create any of the components that stitch things together. At some point, there's like going to be an incentivization problem because like, or just a public goods funding problem, which we know is like hard for Ethereum. It's like how do we fund like the development of like all the things that actually make these objects relevant to each other in like one seamless metaverse? Like who the hell knows?
It's funny because Yearn ran into this problem, right? Because there was no kind of like centralized treasury from the beginning, or there was a small kind of like treasury from the beginning. They ran into problems of kind of like funding, and they're like, okay, how do we be sustainable here? And they kind of like minted more YFI tokens, right? To kind of put into their treasury, and they also stopped kind of paying out to people who staked in governance from the fees that were generated. They just went and bought YFI from the market and kind of used that to pay out developers and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm totally with you. Like if all the money kind of gets sucked out and none of it goes to like a treasury to kind of like improve development or kind of like pay for development, then yeah, we may run into that issue. But I haven't seen anything yet. Maybe I've missed it, but like hopefully there's kind of like a treasury forming or something. Maybe there's gonna be a DAO and A gold will be the governance token for that, and then there'll be like a treasury there. But it's very hard to tell because it's super chaotic right now. I don't think anyone has kind of like a full view of what's happening, not even kind of like the most hardcore people. But I think that as time goes on, as we coalesce around kind of like the core components of this new kind of thing with Loot, there'll be more answers to these questions. But for now, it's just like I can't stress it enough. It's literally just extreme speculation right now and just craziness. It's like don't ape in unless you're happy losing all the money you ape in with.
Right. Like at the end of the day, these are just texts on tokens. That is all that it is. And so like the fact that this has any amount of value is absolutely insane. Like there's only 7,500 bags, I think, loot bags. And so there's 8 objects times that many, which means that, I mean, even when you multiply it, there's not that many objects. And like one bag is like one set of clothes. So really there's only like one set of a complete set of armor and rings and weapons for 7,800 people. Like the obvious funding model is that like, hopefully we can mint more of these things and sell them for Ether to put in a treasury to fund a team. but first a team needs to form around this,
Mm-hmm.
and like the community needs to accept that. And so like
Mm-hmm.
how that, I think maybe that actually is the first obstacle, is like, that is what we have to get to. We need like interested and committed talent to like rise to the top and then have social consensus around who these people are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I think it's going to be things happen fast in this ecosystem, but it's probably going to be like a few weeks before we actually kind of like settle down here. I think the speculation is going to be pretty extreme. We feel like it's pretty much at the start of it. I mean, if you look at AGLD, it's only on Uniswap right now. There's no centralized exchange listings. Loot as kind of like an NFT thing just started kind of like blowing up over the last day or so. So I think like a lot of people still haven't heard of it. So if this thing really does take off, like I believe it actually will. The speculation is just going to get more extreme from here. But then, as you said, like we're going to have to eventually have like a core team that's actually sticking around and building things that people are actually going to use and add utility to it. But until that happens, people love to speculate. I mean, you can look at all the things that have kind of like promises. I mean, there's a lot of kind of projects that promise things and they kind of like build hype and they do the marketing, whatever. People speculate on it and they bid it up. But if you kind of like peel behind the curtain a little bit, you'll see that there's just still so much left to build. And like, there's hardly enough people building it and it's going to take longer than you thought it would. But during these speculative manias, no one cares about that. It seems people just wants to kind of like speculate, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to be very careful in that regard because you could be the one left holding the bag in the end, right? When everything comes crashing down. So that's why I always caution people against kind of like aping into things blindly. It's definitely not the best strategy.
Right. Yeah. When you hear like me and Anthony talk about like all the how cool this is, like that doesn't necessarily, that's not like advice. That's not like like this isn't going to happen. We're just speculating on speculators, and like we also have like way better access to information than the average person, right? Just like we know who the people are. Like we can test out legitimacy a little bit easier. We've been through the shit, and so like just thinking that you can like have similar experiences, like you need to be in the ecosystem like pretty long in order to have these skills where like you can actually have like an educated ape, or who the fuck knows, just go for it. Like I don't know, like whatever.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I think that you or I have any kind of like not special knowledge or anything about this sort of stuff. It's more just about experience, right? Where
that's what
we've
I mean.
experienced.
Like,
We've experienced this
it all.
speculative stuff like many times, and it never changes because humans are the same, right? Like we always kind of like follow the same sort of thing. But at the same time, I think what does change is kind of like the products that are getting built and kind of like the ways people can build them and the services. But those things come definitely later on, right? They don't come now. They come in months. Like it takes a long time to build stuff, right? It's not going to happen overnight. So yeah, but the speculation will, because it's much easier to speculate than it is to build.
that is too true. That is too true. Speculators could always speculate faster than the builders can build. So I want to plug the Daily Gwei, but I need to get the link out. So Anthony and I, we do these every now and then. We used to do them once a week, but then conflict of schedules. But now we do these every now and then. But if you guys don't know Anthony Susano, you're absolutely crazy, and you should absolutely get to know him. And so you should go to his Daily Gwei YouTube channel and subscribe to the Daily Gwei. Here it is coming into the chat. He does these videos that I use to keep up with Ethereum every single day. And I find them immensely valuable. So go follow him on YouTube. Sorry, I'm a little bit sleepy, a little bit loopy right now.
No, that's all right.
Okay,
thank you for the plug, sir.
Of course. Okay, so this whole loot phenomenon and like also the NFT phenomenon, mainly the loot phenomenon, has actually completely it's redefined what I think Ethereum really is for. Like we all know what Ethereum's for. It's a fabric of financial infrastructure that can blanket the earth. I think what it's really for now is Ethereum is the thing that builds the metaverse. It is the metaverse economy. That's going in the 50, 100 years when the metaverse is completely sussed out and complete. It's be like, oh yeah, you mean the thing that's on Ethereum? Like the thing that Ethereum built? Like that is what it is. Like that's what we have been building this entire time.
It's funny. I was actually talking to someone in the Daily Gwei Discord about this yesterday, about like the terms that people are going to use to describe these things. Obviously, metaverse as a term has taken off. Ethereum, people know about, but like I think that the catch-all term for literally everything in this ecosystem is just simply crypto, right?
Mm.
Whenever you hear anyone talk about this sort of stuff, like from normies to kind of like people in the ecosystem, they always refer to it as crypto. So if you think about like the long term, I agree with you that Ethereum is going to be at the center of everything, but will people refer to it as Ethereum, or will Ethereum just be like fall to like the background as the supporting infrastructure? And it's an open question. I actually believe that people will refer to it as Ethereum because they'll own ETH. Because that's a very different thing to kind of like internet protocols, for example. Like Ethereum as a protocol has a native token attached to it. The internet as a protocol does not. So, so the protocols powering the internet, like TCP/IP, no one refers to the internet as that. I mean, people refer to the internet as Wi-Fi these days, really, especially younger people, right? It's just Wi-Fi or like Facebook,
connected
Twitter,
to Wi-Fi.
yeah. So branding is always kind of like important, I think. And I think Ethereum will actually be able to keep as part of people's minds because of the fact that ETH exists as a token people can buy, and then they know that ETH belongs with to Ethereum, and then that'll just kind of like snowball from there. But also like you have all these projects that kind of like all these things priced in ETH as well, like the NFT economy being priced in ETH. Immediately people know, oh well, this is like on Ethereum. I'm using Ethereum right now. I'm using my ETH. So I think that it's just going to be funny to see like what terms people use to describe these sorts of things, because the internet definitely didn't get referred to as TCP/IP besides like the inner kind of like circles. And technically Ethereum as a protocol is very similar to that. But I think that the fact that there's a token changes that completely. But it's going to be, I mean, whoever the big winners are going to be for the normies as well, right? Like Uniswap as a brand is pretty amazing. Like I reckon, could you find someone that knows what Uniswap is but doesn't know what Ethereum is? Like, could you find someone that basically has traded using Uniswap on an app that they have, but nowhere on that app does it say Ethereum, so they've got no idea that they're trading like on Ethereum? I actually bet you could find people like that, and in the future there'll be more and more people like that. They just access through these kind of like front ends or whatever, and it doesn't mention Ethereum, which is fine. But it's just funny how that kind of works, right? Where the naming and the terminology changes over time and evolves over time. I mean, the internet used to be known as like the super information highway or something, or information super highway, something like cringe as hell. And like, no one calls it that anymore. But like these days you have, people calling stuff, it's still Ethereum. And obviously people have a vested interest in making sure people still refer to it as Ethereum because of ETH as a token. But as we get like that mass adoption, I'm actually curious to see what happens there. Everything will be built on ETH. I believe that. Everything will connect to ETH. There'll be bridges in and out. The metaverse will be ETH and Ethereum, but will people refer to it as that? Open question still, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the internet and Ethereum as words are like kind of similar-ish, like similar length, similar syllables. I think I didn't count, but like, kind of, you get my vibe. And like, I think that like the Ethereum name is like one of the biggest strokes of genius that Vitalik has ever had. It is such a good name for whatever the hell this thing is, right? Like the whole idea that like Ethereum is supposed to be in the background. You're supposed to not notice it. It's supposed to be invisible to you. Yet it is the invisible hand that makes the entire economy work. It itself disappears into the ether. Yet it is this. It's Ethereum. It sounds like a world. It sounds like a universe, and that's because it is. It is what it is. Or maybe my bias is about like I've already thought about this so many times, so maybe that's just coming through.
No, it's funny because like I've always loved the name as well because of that, and I think that you've described it perfectly. The funny thing is that the name also kind of is a bit of a homage to World of Warcraft as well, which Vitalik played a lot of. There's these kind of like race called the Ethereals, and there's kind of like ether everywhere, and there's items and worlds and stuff like that, and there's like a place called Netherstorm, which has like a lot of the ether stuff going on. So I think Vitalik was still playing around then.
Is that what Nethermind's named after?
Sorry, never mind. Maybe. I haven't played the game in a while, but yeah, it might be. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of like homage there, which personally speaks to me as well. But like the zone, Netherstorm, is actually like a zone like that, where it's like they've got like the ether out there, and it's like just like an open kind of like thing where there's kind of like a universe outside of it, and it's just it's like crazy. I mean, if you see it, you'll know what I mean, and people listening in or watching will know what I mean. But yeah, I think that the name Ethereum, it couldn't have been better, really, just for describing what Ethereum actually is. And I think the fact that it's like so easy to say as well. I mean, the fact that it's not easy to spell maybe for every, because like if you hear it without seeing the word, you may spell it like with an I. I've seen a lot of people do that before.
I did that when I first got into this ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think that's maybe a little bit of a negative, but at the same time, if you type that into Google, Google's just going to autocorrect you anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think just the name, definitely is really, really, really cool, and I can't think of anything better, to be honest.
Yeah, like I said, it feels like a place you go. And I was talking with Eric Connor about like Ethereum brain, which you definitely have. If anyone has Ethereum brain, it's you. And Ethereum brain is just like, he also, what did I say? Oh yeah, I put out a tweet that said like, hey, can we just pause all Ethereum blocks from like Saturday to Monday so like we can all just take a break? And then Eric Connor said like, have you seen this 50s horror movie called The Blob? Like the Blob just like, it captures you and it sucks you in and it doesn't let you go. And like, like I just said, like what I said is like Ethereum feels like a place you go, right? Like it feels like a place that you enter. And we're all just like kind of like dinking around on MetaMask on these websites. And that just feels like the first instantiation of like this metaphysical, metaversal place, right? Like, and it's just going to be built around us and is literally the blob. The blob is going to build itself around us. And then we are actually going to be inside of it. It's actually going to consume us.
Yeah, no, Ethereum brain is like the perfect way to describe it. I'm definitely on that 24/7, especially still being in lockdown here. I mean, there's not much else I can do, but
huffing more ether, man. Huff the ether.
Yeah, I'm huffing it every day. I mean, especially when the price is going up. I think it's funny because like I noticed the kind of like community just wakes up when the price goes up, right? Like Twitter just becomes on fire, and it's hard to kind of like I mean, it's impossible to take a break, especially having your phone connected to social media and stuff like that. I mean, I can't even take a break if I want to. Even if I'm, when I'm riding my bike, I'm still listening to podcasts. Like, I listened to the Raul Pol podcast that you guys did with him the other day. And I was like riding my bike. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so bullish. Oh my God. Like he's saying,
make you go faster.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't even realize I had traveled as far as I did because I was just distracted by the podcast. I'm like, oh wow. Like, am I already done with my bike ride? That's awesome. But like, I guess maybe that's a perfect segue into another thing I wanted to talk about which was what Raul was saying. He actually got my brain spinning. I had never thought of it like this for some reason. Like he kind of like changed my view on these things. He was talking about the market size and the size of opportunity of crypto generally, right? Where he went, $200 trillion is equities, $200 trillion in like, bonds or whatever it was, or like property. And he said like, I think all up, you could probably push a quadrillion dollars worth of value, and that's not counting derivatives. That's just counting like the value in all of these kind of like assets right now. And then he's like, oh, well, I believe crypto could capture just the equities market alone, and it'd be worth $200 trillion. So the total crypto market cap would go to 200 trillion. It's at what, 2 trillion now, just over that. So another 100x from here. And then he's like, no wonder there's speculation on everything. The opportunity to be even 1% of that $200 trillion market cap is $2 trillion. So when you kind of look at how people are speculating on all these other chains, right? Whether they're Ethereum killers or like Ethereum friends or like other blockchains, whatever, it's totally understandable because not even Ethereum is worth $2 trillion yet. It's not even worth 1% of that total opportunity. And if Ethereum is going to be worth $10 trillion or probably more than that, right? Then all of the smaller ones are definitely going to be worth hundreds of billions and stuff like that, especially ones that have some usage. So kind of putting it in dollar terms really opened my eyes to the fact that people are just going to keep speculating on these things all the time, everywhere. And these market caps that we're seeing right now, they may be kind of like eye-popping relative to what the total market cap is. But if you kind of like project out and say, okay, well, crypto is going to take over the world like we all think it will, then it's going to be hundreds of trillions of dollars is the total crypto market cap over the long term. I'm not saying it's going to happen like next month or anything like that. I'm talking like decades,
not
right?
Advertising
like 10, an ape. No, I'm not, right? But like if you're aping for the long term, like 10, 20 years or whatever, then definitely like that's going to play out in my eyes. I have no doubt
that counts as an ape.
No, it doesn't. I guess like that's like a human. Like I don't know if you use human as an adjective there. But you've evolved
a prefrontal cortex. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So he just really got my kind of like brain spinning on that and kind of thinking about that. And I'm just like, okay. And then, obviously he was very bullish on ETH, saying ETH is the greatest trade right now from a risk reward perspective. And I believe it is. But the funny thing is that if you're in ETH, you don't just stop at ETH, right? You have the whole world on Ethereum to ape into. You have NFTs, you have DeFi, you have social tokens and DAOs and all this sort of stuff going on. So really the opportunity, even right now, I know that, people saying, we're still early has become a meme. Well, I mean, it's so true. Like, I'm not even just saying that to pump bags. I'm just saying that because the metrics, if you look at it and you look at the value of this ecosystem, it's so tiny. And if you actually truly believe that crypto is going to take over the world, it's going to replace the financial system, NFTs are going to reinvent culture and kind of like change the gaming industry, then a $2 trillion total crypto market cap, which really is half of that is Bitcoin, right? Like literally half of that is Bitcoin, which I mean, is just like whatever they want to call it.
We don't need to say, yeah,
gold.
we don't know. Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it is what it
is
is.
Still Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the opportunity is massive. So I think Raul really has a different way of putting these things in the context, because he has like a lot of experience in like the traditional world, especially the macro markets. But he really makes me think bigger than I even think sometimes, which I really appreciated. But that was just like such a bullish podcast, man. Like, geez, you guys had to do it.
Yeah, we've gotten so much like feedback on that one particular podcast. The most feedback we've ever gotten was from that one particular podcast. I think my favorite part of that episode was talking about communities. And I think communities are kind of where Ethereum really gets its meaningful network effects, in addition to the massive network effects that it already has. Like, we already have DeFi and liquidity, which is its own network effect. We already have like the value of Ether, which is its own network effect. Now we have culture. We've recently unlocked culture. And so like now culture is now associated with Ethereum. And if culture is associated with Ethereum, then like communities and social organizations are also going to be on Ethereum, however that means, right? And like, one of the cool things about Ethereum is that it actually makes more cultures more economically viable, right? Like we are able to fund new and more culture. That means we are able to
scales culture, right? Globally scales culture.
Well, yeah, and importantly new cultures and maybe old cultures, whatever the cultures of the cypherpunks are. That's what it scales. But like, it also therefore like it will also fund and scale communities. And so communities will all be built on Ethereum. So if you have like the internet used to be this place where like if you lived in like bumfuck nowhere, South Dakota, which I don't even know if that South Dakota even exists. I've never been there.
Don't ask me, man. I got no idea about the US.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't even know. I could have said anything. So like, but you're from bumfuck nowhere, South Dakota, and you have an interest in anime, but you live in like a very conservative, old-timey town. You don't have any friends to go talk to anime with. So where do you go? You go to the internet. Ethereum is the economic internet. And so now we get to do, I don't know, open up a new dimension of what it means to like find community. It's not only can you find communities, but you can also find value, right? You can also find value that aligns with your communities. And these communities can be economically viable. Like, whatever it means to be economically viable, money and value can be injected into these things. And so now like and especially as like the role of the nation state becomes dissolved because we stop caring about like our identities. I'm going to go on another little sidetrack and come back. Episode coming out, the Layer Zero episode coming out next Tuesday is with Justin Drake. And Justin Drake talked about like how he's like lost his nation state identity to the point where like he speaks so many different languages, but he doesn't speak a single language without an accent, right? Like every single language he speaks has an accent, no matter where he's from, right? And so like people are losing their affiliations for a nation state and they're gaining affiliations with communities, right? We are the Ethereum community. I would also consider myself a part of like the biking community. I also like to ride my bikes. And so maybe I'll go talk to people who are on like the biking subreddit about biking or whatever. But like communities are going to be like, they're going to be, again, tokenized and economically viable on Ethereum, making communities like the next investable like paradigm, the next alpha, the next place you get returns, and communities are just going to be instantiated where DeFi is, which is where Ethereum is. And so I think communities are going to be like this next big thing that like only adds even further network effects to Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, we're financializing global communities because communities are already global due to the internet, right? But they never had like they had kind of like a financial aspect to it depending on the community, and there was some stuff going on, but it wasn't like you could buy a token of a community, right? And this goes back to what I was saying about social tokens or community tokens, where you couldn't basically monetize or financialize your entire community to supercharge it and to get people to actually contribute to it. And that's why communities, I think globally, they can kind of scale. I mean, Reddit's does a pretty good job of scaling a global community because of the way it handled its subreddits and stuff like that. But I still think there's like a level up from that. And obviously Reddit sees that as well because they're doing the community point system. They're scaling that via Arbitrum now, which I think is really cool. But I think the financial aspect definitely just supercharges it all in both directions, to be fair. Like it's not always going to be rosy where prices go up forever. And it's not always going to be rosy where people are making money forever, but it still adds another kind of like dimension to it. And it gives more value back to the kind of creators and the kind of like people, I guess, making the most, like, you know, making the post, contributing the most value to this kind of like, I guess, community, rather than driving all that value to some centralized party like Reddit or kind of like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Because right now, all the content that we create for Twitter, you know, when you put out there all the tweets and everything, not just we, like everyone in general, most of the value goes to Twitter because their stock price goes up because they get more users and they get more ads, they can serve more ads to people, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, you know, we don't really get value out of that. And if there was a decentralized social media built the right way, maybe we would get value out of that because there was a token attached to it or something, or we could tokenize ourselves. We don't even have to rely on that. We can tokenize ourselves. Like you guys have a bank token, right? That people can get exposure to, you know, I guess like be part of the Bankless ecosystem more than just with their social capital, but with their financial capital as well. And then if they want the token value to go up, well, they can contribute, right? They can just make it go up themselves. And there's lots of communities like this. I think Friends with Benefits is another one that I've seen kind of pop up over the last few months, get a lot of attention. There's a few others out there. There's so many of these things happening. And I think maybe social token isn't even the right term for it. I think just DAO, like it's just a token that's attached to like a DAO and people can do things, add value to it. It goes up or down based on that sort of stuff. So yeah, we really have basically made it so we can financialize global communities and scale it. I think scaling is not scaling as in like scaling Ethereum via layer 2 or whatever. I'm talking about like just scaling something in general. It's usually very hard to scale a community globally, but I think with the financial aspect to it, it becomes like a bit easier to coordinate and to scale these sorts of things.
Yeah, did you see the tweet out of Jiho from Axie Infinity about Discord?
Maybe
he was like we have to start pruning like 1,000 members a day out of Discord because they hit the limits of the Discord size, right? So like the power of tokens and around a community. And you're totally right. Like community tokens, social tokens, DAO tokens, these are all like different ways of talking about the same thing. We haven't really come up with the best words for them. But like the existence of a token inside of the Axie Infinity community hit the limits of scale of Discord coordination. So we had this Web3 tool, which is the token, and it broke Web 2 coordination infrastructures because it was too big. It hit the limits of scale. It broke part of the internet real quick. So like it's going to force the internet to become even better of a coordination technology just because we have this thing of a token that brings so much attention and energy into it.
Exactly. And it's funny because you can also like to get around that, you can also use kind of like a gating mechanism, I guess, where you say, oh, you have to kind of like own these tokens to be part of this exclusive social club. Maybe that doesn't work for Axie, but I know with Friends with Benefits, they have it. So you have to hold a certain amount of tokens to access the club. And by accessing the club, you get access to all this alpha, right? Like you get access to, I mean, social clubs are nothing new, right? There's always like generally a fee you have to pay or whatever, like whether that's to be a donation or something. And maybe by buying FWB token, So, and by buying like FWB tokens, you kind of like make the price go up and makes everyone a little bit richer that has the token and stuff like that. So that aspect to it, I think, is really important as well. But also you have to do it in a way that doesn't just like exclude people, right? Because if you're trying to build a community that services everyone in the world, well, you can't require people who may be kind of like in poorer countries or whatever to buy $100 worth of a token, because $100 to them could be like a year's worth of like their salary or something, depending where they are in the world. So you have to find other ways to get people involved. And there are, like, you can give tokens away for free, for contributions. You don't have to bring money to the table. You can just bring your value through writing a blog post or doing whatever. Like, you can get access to these clubs by just contributing value, which is totally free to do. So I think that's an important aspect, because you can't just have token gating mechanisms. That's just not going to work.
Right. Yeah. The best part about Ethereum is it finds a way to like instantiate all forms of value upon it. Right. So like social capital, actual capital, like, and then also just like earning via like, cause like, Axie Infinities became exorbitantly priced out. So it priced out all of like the third world countries that love to play the games. And so then they just made Yield Guild, which like, okay, you don't have enough money to make to buy an Axie, just come part of the guild, earn your way into one, and then you get to have one. It's like when you drive an Uber to pay for your car, except you don't get gouged by the company that gave you the loan. It's a very nice feature.
hmm Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great way to put it. Just talking about kind of like yield guild, where people can kind of come together and kind of like act as a side chain to the main thing, where they're basically like, hey, we will do these things for you so that you can have access to this, which is incredibly important, because we shouldn't just be building these tools for the people who have the money. We should be building them for people without, because they're just as important as the people with the money. They're probably more important, because we're going to get more value out of this stuff than kind of like the people that already have the money will. So I think that we need to definitely make sure that we don't just like create an exclusionary ecosystem. And I know that in saying that, like the Ethereum gas fees are already kind of exclusionary for people who don't want to kind of have to pay $50 for a trade or whatever. And that's why we harp on so much about layer two scaling. And that's why people, like, I was excited to see people use like the Polygon POS chain, even though that's not like a true L2 as they call it. It's a kind of like, it's a side chain. People still got to experience DeFi on the cheap, right? They didn't have to pay the really high fees. And that's an amazing onboarding vehicle for people as well. So I'm very, like, I've become more and more conscious of the fact that we need to just be very careful about not pricing people out of these things, but also respecting the fact that we want to keep things decentralized and secure as well. I mean, the reason why Ethereum's fees are so high, and the reason why we haven't kind of like quote unquote fixed the layer one fees, is because the fix is actually worse than the fees, because the fix centralizes, and we don't want that in terms of like long term. So we the other fix is obviously layer two scaling, sharding when that comes along, and those kind of like shared infrastructure things like yield guild and stuff like that, and doing other forms of subsidization to get these users on board as well.
Totally. Anything else that you want to talk about before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I think ETH is going to hit all-time high soon.
Before
and
Bitcoin,
I think
right?
If it does it before Bitcoin, that's going to be a pretty big shift, because it's never done that, right?
Right, that's a good
Bitcoin
point.
was always the leader of the big caps. But that's going to be a pretty big, especially
Do
against
you know
ETH.
if that happens? Do you know how many times we're going to be saying the word flippening on crypto Twitter? Oh my
man,
God! Literally,
I don't like
every
saying
single
it
tweet.
I don't like saying it because it's a curse word, and like
it's not. Yeah, it's not. Flipping's happening.
But yeah, I know it's happening. But the thing is, every time like people kind of like get too excited about it, I actually think traders see that and they're like, oh, we're going to go back into BTC because the ETH guys are getting too pompous here. But no, I think the price moving up, I haven't been surprised by that at all, considering we've burnt what, like 176,000 ETH right now.
Oh my God, you have it on a fucking counter.
Yeah, right there. It's my little iPad mini. It's on ultrasound.money always. I always watch it. It's actually a good alpha tool as well, because when you see the gas price spiking, you can go to ultrasound.money and look at the 1 hour burners and see what's spiking it. And it's usually an NFT drop. And then you can go ape into that NFT drop if you want, right? And catch it before anyone else does, or before like a lot of other people do. But just generally, I think when we go back to all-time high, I think we're going to kickstart what I like to call the second wave of this bull market, and it's going to get pretty crazy. It's going to get crazy for everything Ethereum. I think that the reason why it's going to get crazy is not just because of the all-time high price, but also because Ethereum reaching it before Bitcoin is a massive shift in dynamics, and it's a very big narrative break. Not to say that it can. I mean, Bitcoin can definitely get to it before ETH can, because it can. Like, I'm not to say it's guaranteed that it's going to happen, but ETH is definitely closer right now. But the narrative has always been like, Bitcoin runs first and everything else runs, and that flips this on its head. Yeah, exactly. Like Ethereum doesn't wait for Bitcoin anymore. Actually, Chris Boniski put out a good tweet yesterday where he said Bitcoin has lost its cultural hold on the crypto ecosystem. I actually think it's lost it a long time ago. I saw the writing on the wall a long time ago. But now I think the mainstream crypto people are seeing that, and they're like, Bitcoin has lost its hold on the culture, on the market, and Ethereum is kind of becoming the center point for this ecosystem. And not just Ethereum, but everything else that has utility, because that's what it's all about. I've always been a utility maximalist at the end of the day. Like, that's why I don't hold Bitcoin. I've never really liked Bitcoin, is because I can't do anything with it. Like, I know I can bring it to Ethereum to do stuff with it, but then why don't I just own ETH instead? Like, why would I go through the extra steps? So I think that generally the narratives are going to change very, very rapidly over the next few months. And we're going to see a very big shift from Bitcoin being regarded as the king to Ethereum being regarded as the king. And I think that's going to lead us into the flippening, but I don't know if we're going to hold it the first time around. There's going to be a lot of volatility and speculation around that.
Mm-hmm. I think Ethereum is a girl's name. I think that makes it a queen.
Really? Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my take. That's the end of the last of my takes for this show.
Okay. I'm going to let you go to bed because you're really, really tired. It's only like 2 p.m. for me.
I'm a little bit loopy right now. Yeah. I literally have done 5 shows today.
Oh wow. Okay. All good. All good.
All right. Here
We'll leave
is
it at that
Anthony
then.
Daily Gwei in the chat once again. So make sure you go follow him and subscribe to his YouTube channel. And once again, thank you everyone for tuning into the Bankless Handshake Daily Gwei every now and then live stream.
Thanks everyone.